He lost everything: his wife, his unborn child, and his purpose. But when a little girl's life falls into the hands of the same monsters who destroyed his world, he becomes death itself. The man's name was Sung-hoon, a high-ranking agent trained by the South Korean government. His daily work was to punish evildoers for the country, living on the edge of life. In his 10 years in the industry, he had never failed. One day, his wife showed him a banknote and told him that he was going to be a father. Sung-hoon burst into tears of joy, and the two hugged each other tightly. The arrival of a child was like a ray of light, illuminating his dark world. A few days later, he and his wife went to the store to buy a pair of baby shoes for their unborn child. Just as they paid, Sung-hoon received a phone call. While answering the phone, he signaled to his wife in the car that he had already bought the shoes. His wife smiled and gave him a thumbs up. Life seemed peaceful, but the moment he turned around, a large truck suddenly rushed over and knocked the car on the side of the road 10 meters away. His wife and child were instantly crushed to pieces, and blood flowed all over the ground. Sung-hoon took a few steps forward with a dazed look on his face. At this moment, his enemy appeared and fired 2 shots at him. Just as he was about to finish him off, his teammates arrived and scared him. He looked at the shattered car in front of him and cried to the sky. The death of his wife and children was a huge blow to Sung-hoon. He resolutely quit the organization, deleted his files, and opened a small stall under an assumed name to make a living. He never interacted with anyone again. He thought he would live a dull life, but this girl named Ginny made his dull life no longer dull. However, he pretended not to hear them and never paid any attention. However, Ginny would always appear behind him to cheer him up. Although Sung-hoon never responded to him, over time, in return, he would give Ginny a bowl of rice when she was hungry. Although Sung-hoon was usually taciturn, he would inexplicably give Ginny a sense of security. Ginny was abandoned by her father since she was a child and depended on her mother for everything. However, her mother was a drug addict and even worked as a dancer in a bar to make drugs. Ginny was a burden to him. One day, when Ginny came home from school, she saw her mother sitting on the ground in dejection. Ginny, unsure why, obediently closed the door. She watched as the woman heated a spoonful of white liquid over a flame, then sucked it through a syringe and injected it into her ankle. Within minutes, the woman had inhaled enough liquid, tears streaming down her face. She twitched uncontrollably on the bed, babbling. Hiding outside, Ginny heard her mother's voice and covered her ears in agony. And that wasn't the end of it. The next day, Ginny was caught stealing at school and was scolded by classmates' parents, who demanded they intervene. Sung-hoon happened to pass by, and Ginny, as if she had found a lifeline, immediately pointed at him for protection. He, however, pretended not to recognize her and turned away. Ginny was deeply hurt by his reaction, but despite this, he remained her favorite person. Ginny turned and left, leaving him alone, stunned and blaming herself. Meanwhile, Ginny's mother, in order to enjoy herself to the fullest, knocked out her henchman and stole a large bag of the gang's goods. To avoid being discovered, she hid the white powder in a camera the next day and kept it in a pawn shop in the mountains. Meanwhile, Sang-jun, the second in command of the gang who learned about the missing goods, was being slapped and feasted by the boss in front of many of his brothers. Even though her mouth was bleeding from the beating, she didn't dare to say a word because she knew she couldn't afford to offend the boss. Soon, Sang-jun's younger brother Sang-kun found Ginny's home. To force her to reveal the whereabouts of the goods, he tied up Ginny's mother. Then they, in front of Ginny, pressed a hot hair dryer hard on her mother's thigh. Finally, the woman couldn't bear the pain anymore and gave away Sung-hoon's pawn shop. Sang-kun immediately sent his men to look for it. Sung-hoon, who had just returned home, found that the lock of his door had been pried open. He went in and turned on the light, only to see a yellow-haired man with a knife standing in front of him. Before the yellow-haired man could speak, Sung-hoon calmly took out his wallet and told the other party to take the money and leave. Sung-hoon ended the fight in minutes. Sang-kun, on the other end of the phone, ordered Sung-hoon to hand over the camera bag that the woman had pawned yesterday. Otherwise, he would kill Ginny. Hearing Ginny's cry for help on the other end of the phone, he instantly realized that the other party had kidnapped Ginny. He immediately went to the warehouse to find the camera bag and threw it to guard. However, after confirming that he had obtained it, the other party did not leave directly. Instead, he turned around and shot the fat man on the ground to death. Sung-hoon watched the fat man being beaten to death with his own eyes, but he didn't even blink. Bearded man, who was standing by, guessed from years of experience that Sung-hoon must be someone special, so before leaving, he deliberately left a Nokia for him, but never mentioned releasing Ginny. When Sung-hoon reacted and chased downstairs, the man had already stepped on the accelerator and left. Sung-hoon chased him relentlessly, but the car was driving faster and faster. He could only hear Ginny's terrified cries for help from a distance. In desperation, Sung-hoon chose to call the police, but when the police heard that it was a drug trafficking and kidnapping case, they delayed the call, saying they were busy and lacked staff. He hung up the phone in disappointment. Just when he was at a loss, Sang-kun called. He threatened Sung-hoon with Jinny's life and asked him to help deliver a batch of goods. He promised that as long as Sung-hoon agreed, he would release Jinny and her mother. Sung-hoon quickly drove away the car that the man had prepared in advance, then went to the designated location to pick up the goods. Then he arrived at the transaction location within the specified time. But to his surprise, the goods were actually for the gang boss. The drug boss, facing the Sung-hoon, was overly enthusiastic. He rubbed his hands together and spoke excitedly, even asking his underlings to bring him a pot of tea. Sung-hoon said nothing, but instead pulled out a bag of flour and slammed it on the table. This left the drug boss stunned. The person he was supposed to meet was Chinese, so how could he be Korean? The drug boss then received a call from Sang-jun, who told him he had already called the police and told him to fend for himself. Sang-jun had set up this trap, partly to avenge the slap he had received from the boss that day, and partly to get rid of Sung-hoon, a hot potato. Sung-hoon was completely unaware of this, and the boss, furious, blew flour into Sung-hoon's face. His underlings scolded him, slapped him, and kicked him in panic. Sung-hoon was immediately surrounded, but blinded by the powder, he couldn't fight back. The underlings, standing nearby, ordered their men to throw Sung-hoon from the 18th floor. Fortunately, he landed on the safety net below and survived. When he recovered, he found the drug boss preparing to drive away. He quickly cut the safety net and leaped onto the front of the car, only to be thrown off by the boss's car the next second. Meanwhile, the police had blocked the exit. Sung-hoon, a strong man, immediately started the car and, regardless of the risk to his life, brought the boss's car to a stop at 200 miles per hour. Seeing that the boss was about to escape, Sung-hoon quickly slammed open the car door. However, as he stood up to give chase, the trunk popped open, catching his attention. Seeing him frozen in place, the police quickly restrained him. The next moment, the police were shocked to see a naked woman lying in the trunk, covered in knife wounds. Her heart, liver, spleen, lungs, kidneys, and even her corneas had been removed, leaving nothing worth selling. Sung-hoon looked closely and realized that the body was Jinny's mother. Because the body was found in his car, he was taken to the police station as a murderer. He remained silent when questioned by the police. However, looking at the autopsy photos they'd left on the table, he became deeply concerned for Jinny's safety. Seeing the inaction of the officers, who were only concerned about their meals, he resolved to rescue Jinny on his own. He seized the moment when the officers bent down to unlock the door and, in a panic, sent them to sleep. With 2 cool punches, he knocked down another, and in just 3 minutes, he had taken down all 15 officers in the station. Then, amidst the kitchen waste, he found the phone that Huzi had given him. Because it had been re-encrypted, Sung-hoon, drawing on his years of experience, immediately tracked down the seller. He gently tried to remind the boss, but seeing Sung-hoon alone, the boss pouted in disbelief. His younger brother, seeing this, was about to draw his sword and strike him. Sung-hoon grabbed the handle, his right hand, easily breaking his fingers. He then forced him to wipe his feet, wrapped it around a 10-meter-long steel knife, and tied it around his neck. He threw the man over his shoulder, instantly disheartening him. The boss was so frightened that he burst into tears and cursed. Sung-hoon grabbed his head and used a tempered glass rod to absorb the water. Just as the boss was about to run, he was pinned to the wall. The next second, the boss obediently gave him a business card and confessed everything he knew. It turned out that the Sang-jun brothers were secretly engaged in a variety of shady activities. To hide their activities, they specifically adopted a large number of orphans. During the day, these children were responsible for selling goods, and at night, they had to participate in the production. If a child was poisoned during the process, not only would they not receive medical treatment, but they would be carried to a small dark room nearby by Sang-jun's men and have their most valuable corneas removed. At this time, on the other side, Jinny was locked up in a small dark room by a strange woman. The room was full of children of her age. These children were dirty, and their eyes no longer had the childishness of their age. The days that Jinny was about to face were to help the Sang-jun brothers trade goods day after day. In order to successfully rescue Jinny, he personally cut short his long hair to disguise his identity. He had failed to save his wife and children before, but this time he must rescue Jinny. Before the action, he skillfully checked a pistol and began to look for Jinny's whereabouts. Soon Sung-hoon followed a boy to an abandoned company. He lit a kerosene lamp, and the room was full of furniture. He followed the footprints on the ground to a set of wardrobes and carefully opened the cabinet door. There was a secret door hidden inside. Following the secret door, Sung-hoon successfully came to the drug-making den of the Sang-jun brothers. Looking at the dirty and messy operating table in front of him, Sung-hoon was stunned. At this time, the fat doctor was about to stun the child to take out the cornea. Sung-hoon waved his hand gently and told the girl to stay away. Then he shot him to the west. On the other side, Sang-Jun heard the gunshot and came out to check. Sung-Hoon shot his younger brother away, ripped off his mask, grabbed his hair, and asked where Jinny was. Soon Sang-Jun on the other side received a call from Sung-Hoon, asking him to hand over Jinny. Sang-Jun shamelessly mocked him, only to see Sung-Hoon press the gun and shoot, directly hitting a nail into Sang-Kuen's thigh. Sang-Kuen cried for his parents in pain. Anyone who dared to threaten Jinny would have no choice but to die. He tied a bag of white powder to the fishing line, and then tied the fishing line to the oil lamp. Then he cut the gas pipe, opened the valve to the maximum, tore open the flour bag, made a simple bomb, and quietly waited for the king of hell to come and lock Sang-Kuen's life. While the only survivor, Brother Beard, had already been completely blocked by Sung-Hoon's skills. He put down his pistol, took out a machete, and confidently chose to fight Sung-Hoon in close combat. Sung-Hoon bit his palm hard, and the dagger was stabbed into his heart instantly. Then Sung-Hoon chased him to the parking lot without stopping. At this time, Sang-Jun was about to drive away, but before the car started, Sung-Hoon's gun arrived first. Sang-Jun was scared and immediately shifted gears and accelerated, ready to rush out of the parking lot. As a result, Sung-Hoon shot out the headlights, 2 shots blew out the rearview mirrors, and 3 shots directly blew out the tires. Sang-Jun's luxury car instantly lost direction and crashed into the opposite vehicle. Seeing Sung-Hoon casually changing the magazine not far away and closing in step by step, Sang-Jun quickly called the police, but before he could say anything, Sung-Hoon had already climbed onto the base roof. "Come on, you kid, here you come." He aimed the gun at Sang-Jun's position, but the bullet was bounced away instantly. Although Sang-Jun was scared to pee his pants, he still did not forget to show off that this was bulletproof glass. Just when he thought that Sung-Hoon could not touch him, Sung-Hoon had already put the gun tip on the glass. "This is a rebound, you loser." After dozens of shots, the bullet holes in the glass were clearly visible. At this time, Sang-Jun finally realized that he was afraid, but it was too late. And he was killed. There was only one step away. Because no matter how hard he tried, he failed to save Jinny in the end. Without the support of hatred and obsession, he was like a body without a soul. He knelt on his knees, changed the magazine, loaded the gun, and prepared to put an end to it. But at the last moment before pulling the trigger, a childish and familiar voice came. Sung-Hoon turned around in disbelief, only to see the lively Jinny. It turned out that at the last moment when the doctor was about to remove the eyeball, had a change of heart and scared Jinny. Because a band-aid from Jinny had brought a touch of warmth to his cold and ruthless world, and Jinny also brought hope of life to Sung-Hoon. But Jinny took a step forward, he took 2 steps back. He carefully hid the pistol behind his back and told Jinny, "Don't run, don't go." At this moment, the 2 souls with broken hearts were redeemed by each other. At this moment, Sung-Hoon seemed to hug them. For the first time in her life, Jinny felt the warmth of a father's love.
아저씨가